The silent dawn, the message arrived at 0347 hours. Earth Standard Time. Admiral Sarah Chen was reviewing fleet deployment schedules when her personal communicator buzzed with the emergency tone that every military officer dreaded. She had been expecting routine reports from the outer colonies, maybe some minor pirate activity or trade disputes. What she received instead would change the course of human history forever. Admiral Chen, this is Captain Rodriguez from the U.S. Vigilant. We've reached Haven Colony's coordinates. The voice was strained, barely controlled. Ma'am, there's nothing here. Nothing at all. Sarah's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Haven Colony housed 4.2 million civilians, one of humanity's most successful settlements beyond the Sol system. It was impossible for nothing to be there. Clarify your report, Captain. The entire planet has been glassed, ma'am. The surface is crystallized slag. No life signs, no structures, no orbital stations. Even the moons have been cracked apart. Whatever did this used weapons we've never seen before. The cup slipped from Sarah's fingers, shattering against the floor. Her daughter Maya taught at Haven's primary school. Maya, who had video called just 3 days ago, excited about her students' science fair projects. Maya, who had chosen to help build humanity's future on a distant world. Send me everything, Captain. Every scan, every reading, every piece of debris you can find. Sarah's voice remained steady, but her hands trembled as she activated the emergency protocols. And Captain, this information is classified until further notice. Within an hour, Sarah stood in the underground command center beneath Geneva, surrounded by holographic displays showing the devastation. The images were beyond comprehension. What had once been a thriving world with sprawling cities, agricultural zones, and research facilities was now a smooth sphere of black glass. The attack had been so thorough, so complete, that even the planet's magnetic field had been disrupted. General Marcus Webb, her oldest friend and closest advisor, placed a hand on her shoulder. Sarah, I'm sorry. Maya was a good kid. Was. The word tasted like poison. She was 26. Marcus, she had her whole life ahead of her. They all did. Dr. Elena Baskis, the United Defense Council's chief weapons analyst, looked up from her datapad with grim determination. Admiral, I've analyzed the energy signatures. This wasn't random destruction. The weapons used were designed specifically to eliminate every trace of organic life while leaving the planet's mineral resources intact. This was genocide with a purpose. The evidence was undeniable. The attackers had used plasma storm weapons, technology that could turn an entire world's atmosphere into a weapon against its own surface. The precision required suggested an advanced civilization with significant military capabilities. More importantly, the attack had been unprovoked. Haven Colony had no military installations, no weapons, no strategic value beyond its agricultural output. Who? Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer. The Vorthok Empire, Alina confirmed. The energy signatures match their theoretical weapons profiles. They've been watching us, studying us, and they decided to make a statement. The Vorthok were an ancient species that controlled a significant portion of the galaxy's outer rim. They had made contact with humanity 50 years ago, initially through trade agreements and diplomatic exchanges. Relations had been cordial but distant. The Vorthok considered themselves the galaxy's natural rulers, viewing younger species as temporary annoyances to be managed or eliminated as needed. Sarah stared at the ruined planet rotating slowly in the holographic display. They wanted to test us, to see how we'd react to losing an entire colony. The question is, Marcus said grimly, how do we respond? The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain James Torres, barely 30 years old and already commanding the fastest squadron in the fleet, stepped forward. We show them what happens when you hurt a human family. Sarah looked at the young pilot, seeing the fire in his eyes that she felt burning in her own chest. Explain, Haven Colony wasn't just a settlement. It was home to people from every nation on Earth, every background, every culture. When the Vorthok destroyed it, they didn't just attack one world. They attacked all of humanity. And when you attack a human family, the whole family responds. The room fell silent as the implications settled in. For the first time in human history, every nation, every colony, every settlement would unite behind a single cause. The Vorthok had succeeded in their test, but not in the way they intended. They had discovered that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their military might. It was their ability to stand together when everything they loved was threatened. Dr. Vasquez, Sarah said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. How long would it take to retrofit our entire fleet with plasma storm weapons? Admiral, we don't have the technology. The energy requirements alone would drain our entire power grid. Then we'll build something better. Marcus, I need production schedules for every shipyard in the system. We're going to need more ships than we've ever built before. How many ships are we talking about? Marcus asked. Sarah turned to face the tactical display, where red dots marked every known Vorthok military installation across their empire. All of them. Every ship we can build, buy, or borrow. The Vorthok think they're dealing with a single colony. They're about to learn they're facing the entire human race. The next 72 hours transformed human space into a hive of activity unlike anything in recorded history. Shipyards that had been producing cargo vessels and research ships were retooled for military production. Mining operations across the asteroid belt were militarized to provide raw materials. Even civilian transport ships were called into service, their hulls reinforced and weapons systems installed. Dr. Vasquez worked around the clock with teams of engineers and scientists, developing new weapons based on the energy signatures recovered from Haven Colony. They couldn't replicate the Vorthok plasma storm technology, but they could create something uniquely human. Instead of turning a planet's atmosphere against itself, they designed weapons that could punch through any known shielding and deliver devastating kinetic strikes. The breakthrough came when Alina remembered an old theory about using controlled gravity wells as weapons. By creating artificial black holes and directing their gravitational effects, human ships could literally tear apart enemy vessels at the molecular level. The weapons required enormous amounts of energy, but human engineers had always excelled at solving power generation problems. As the weeks passed, the human fleet grew from hundreds to thousands of vessels. Every major corporation contributed resources. Every government pledged support. Every family that had lost someone at Haven Colony volunteered their children for military service. The response was unprecedented in human history. Sarah stood on the bridge of the newly constructed flagship, the UES Retribution, watching as the final squadrons took their positions. The ship was a marvel of human engineering, built specifically for this mission. Its hull was reinforced with materials developed for deep space mining. Its weapon systems were based on theoretical physics that had never been tested in combat, and its crew was composed of volunteers from every corner of human space. Admiral, Captain Torres reported from his position at the tactical station. All squadrons, report ready. We have 850,000 vessels in formation. Sarah nodded, looking out at the massive fleet that filled the space around Earth. Each ship represented humanity's determination to protect their own. Each crew member carried the memory of 4.2 million innocent lives lost to alien aggression. The Vorthok destroyed Haven Colony because they thought we were weak, she announced over the fleet-wide communication system. They believed that eliminating one world would teach us to fear them. They were wrong. Today, we show them what happens when you threaten the human family. Today, we teach them that there are consequences for genocide. The fleet began to move, accelerating toward the edge of the solar system where they would engage their faster-than-light drives. The journey to Vorthok space would take several weeks, but Sarah knew that every day would make them stronger, human. Engineers would continue improving their weapons. Human tacticians would refine their strategies, and human resolve would grow harder with each passing hour. As Earth fell behind them, Sarah thought about Maya one last time. Her daughter had died believing in humanity's future, working to build something better for the next generation. Now, that future would be secured not through education and diplomacy, but through the oldest human tradition of all, protecting the family no matter the cost. The Vorthok had wanted to test humanity's resolve. They were about to get their answer, written in fire and steel across the stars themselves. Asterisk. The storm unleashed. The journey to Vorthok space took 18 days, but Admiral Sarah Chen used every moment to prepare for what would become the largest military operation in human history. The fleet had grown during transit as reserve squadrons caught up from the outer colonies, bringing their total strength to over 900,000 vessels. Each ship carried crew members who had volunteered for a mission they might not survive, united by grief and determination. On the bridge of the UES Retribution, Sarah reviewed the intelligence reports one final time. The Vorthok Empire controlled 47 star systems, with their primary military installations concentrated around their homeworld of Kethva. Their technology was advanced, their fleets were experienced, and their empire had existed for over 10,000 years. By every conventional measure, humanity was about to engage in a war they couldn't win. Admiral Captain Torres called from the tactical station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Vorthok Border Patrol. They're requesting immediate communication." Sarah straightened in her command chair. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a figure that would haunt Sarah's nightmares for years to come. High Commander Zethkal was tall and imposing, his crystalline carapace reflecting the bridge lights in patterns that seemed to shift and flow. His forearms gestured gracefully as he spoke, but his multifaceted eyes held the cold calculation of a predator. "I am High Commander Zethkal of the Vorthok Imperial Navy. You have entered sovereign Vorthok space with a military fleet. State your intentions immediately, or face the consequences." Sarah stood, her uniform crisp despite the long journey. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We're here to discuss the unprovoked destruction of Haven Colony and the murder of 4.2 million human civilians." Zethkal's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Ah, yes. The agricultural world. That was merely a demonstration of Vorthok power. Your species has been expanding too rapidly, claiming systems that should belong to your betters. Consider it a lesson in humility." "The only lesson here," Sarah replied, her voice deadly calm, "is that genocide has consequences." "Consequences?" Zethkal's laugh was a sound like breaking glass. "You bring less than 1,000,000 primitive vessels against the might of an empire that has conquered galaxies. Your arrogance will be your extinction." The transmission ended. leaving the bridge in tense silence. Sarah turned to address her crew, knowing that every word would be recorded and remembered by history. The Vorthok have made their position clear. They destroyed Haven Colony as a demonstration of power, and they have no intention of accepting responsibility for their actions. They've chosen to treat this as a conventional military engagement. General Webb, who had been monitoring fleet communications, stepped forward. "Admiral, we're receiving similar transmissions from Vorthok commanders throughout their border systems. They're mobilizing their entire military to meet us." "Good," Sarah said grimly. "That means they're taking us seriously. Dr. Vasquez, status report on our new weapons systems." Alina looked up from her engineering console, her eyes bright with the fervor of a scientist who had just revolutionized warfare. "The gravity well generators are fully operational across the fleet. We've also finished deploying the kinetic bombardment systems. Admiral, these weapons are unlike anything ever used in space combat. We're about to rewrite the rules of war." Sarah nodded, then activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All vessels, this is Admiral Chen. In approximately 6 hours, we will engage the Vorthok military at their primary installation in the Kethva system. I want every crew member to understand what we're fighting for. We're not here for conquest or expansion. We're here because they murdered our families and expected us to accept it quietly." She paused, looking out at the vast fleet surrounding the flagship. "The Vorthok are about to learn that humans don't forgive the murder of innocents. They're about to discover that when you attack one human colony, you attack all of humanity. And when you attack all of humanity, you face the consequences." The fleet accelerated toward Kethva, their faster-than-light drives creating a corridor of distorted space that would announce their arrival to anyone with sensors. Sarah wanted the Vorthok to know they were coming. She wanted them to have time to contemplate what they had unleashed. The Battle of Kethva began at 1347 hours, ship time. The Vorthok had assembled their entire home fleet, over 200,000 vessels of various sizes and capabilities. Their ships were sleek and elegant, constructed from materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with the precision of a species that had perfected warfare over millennia. The human fleet arrived in a formation that defied traditional military doctrine. Instead of maintaining defensive positions, they spread out across the entire system, surrounding the Vorthok forces from every direction. It was a tactic that should have been impossible with conventional weapons, but human engineering had made the impossible routine. "Admiral," Captain Torres reported, his voice tight with concentration, "the Vorthok are hailing us. Ambassador Yilthara is requesting immediate negotiations." Sarah almost smiled. The Vorthok had expected a conventional battle, fleet against fleet, with predictable tactics and acceptable losses. They were beginning to realize that humanity had brought something entirely different to their doorstep. "Put her through." Ambassador Yilthara appeared on the screen. Her appearance more refined than the military commander they had encountered earlier. Her carapace was decorated with intricate patterns that suggested high rank, and her voice carried the trained diplomacy of someone accustomed to negotiating with lesser species. "Admiral Chen, I am Ambassador Yilthara of the Vorthok Diplomatic Corps. The destruction of your colony was an unfortunate miscalculation. We are prepared to offer compensation and a formal apology if you will withdraw your forces immediately." Sarah studied the diplomat's face, noting the subtle signs of fear in her posture. "Ambassador, your military commander was very clear that Haven Colony was destroyed deliberately as a lesson in humility. Are you suggesting he was lying?" High Commander Zethkal, overstated the situation. The Vorthok Empire values peace and cooperation with younger species. We can resolve this diplomatically. Diplomatic resolution was an option for weeks ago, Sarah replied. You chose warfare instead. Now you'll face the consequences of that choice. The ambassador's composure cracked slightly. Admiral, you don't understand what you're risking. The Vorthok Empire has allies throughout the galaxy. If you proceed with this attack, you will face retaliation from dozens of species. Humanity will be marked for extinction. Sarah leaned forward, her voice carrying the weight of 4.2 million dead civilians. Ambassador, let me make something clear. Your empire murdered my daughter, along with millions of other innocent people. You did it to send a message about power. Today, humanity sends a message about human resolve. When you threaten our families, we don't negotiate, we respond. The transmission ended, and Sarah turned to her weapons officer. Dr. Vasquez, initiate the gravity well generators. Let's show them what human innovation looks like. The space around Kethfa suddenly erupted in impossible geometries as thousands of human vessels activated their new weapons simultaneously. Artificial gravitational fields began forming throughout the system, creating pockets of distorted space-time that pulled at the Vorthok fleet with irresistible force. The effect was immediate and devastating. Vorthok ships that had survived countless battles found themselves torn apart by gravitational shear forces. Their elegant hulls cracked and shattered as artificial black holes devoured entire squadrons. The precision formations that had dominated galactic warfare for millennia became death traps as gravity wells pulled vessels into each other. High Commander Zethkal's flagship tried to retreat, but Captain Torres had anticipated the move. His squadron unleashed kinetic bombardment rounds that traveled at significant fractions of light speed, each projectile carrying enough energy to shatter a moon. The Vorthok commander's vessel simply ceased to exist, vaporized by the impact of refined human engineering. Within 4 hours, the Vorthok home fleet was completely destroyed. Not defeated, not routed, but utterly annihilated. The survivors were barely a dozen vessels that had managed to escape the system before the gravity wells could tear them apart. The loss of life was staggering by any measure, but Sarah felt no satisfaction. This wasn't about victory in battle. This was about justice for the innocent. Admiral, General Webb reported, we're receiving surrender requests from Vorthok installations throughout their empire. They're offering complete capitulation and reparations for the Haven colony attack. Sarah stood at the command station, looking out at the debris field that had once been the galaxy's most feared military force. General, transmit the following message to every Vorthok installation, every allied species, and every government in the galaxy. Asterisk. She activated the fleet-wide communication system, ensuring that her words would be recorded and distributed throughout known space. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. Today, humanity demonstrated the consequences of unprovoked aggression against human civilians. The Vorthok Empire chose to test our resolve by murdering 4.2 million innocent people. They have learned that such actions carry a price. She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. Let this be a message to every species in the galaxy. Humanity seeks peace and cooperation with all intelligent life. We will trade fairly, negotiate honestly, and respect the sovereignty of other species. But if you threaten our families, if you murder our children, if you mistake our desire for peace as weakness, you will face the full might of human resolve. The fleet began to withdraw from Vorthok space, their mission complete. Behind them, the remnants of an empire that had dominated the galaxy for 10,000 years struggled to comprehend what had just happened. A species they had dismissed as primitive had just demonstrated military capabilities that redefined the possible. Sarah returned to her quarters as the fleet began the journey home, carrying with them the knowledge that humanity had crossed a threshold. They were no longer the young species seeking acceptance from established powers. They were the force that had brought the galaxy's greatest empire to its knees in a single day. As she looked out at the stars, Sarah thought about Maya one last time. Her daughter had died believing in humanity's future, working to build something better for the next generation. Today, that future had been secured not through education and diplomacy, but through the ancient human tradition of protecting the family no matter the cost. The